Prince Igor Svyatoslavich the Brave was a Rus prince. His baptismal name was Yury. Igor was Prince of Putivl, of Novgorod-Seversk, and of Chernigov. Chronicle evidence reveals that he had an enviably successful military career. He led many campaigns against the Cumans, from among which the chronicles report only one defeat, but it was his defeat at the Rivica Yala that has become immortalized through its literary rendering in the Lay of Igor's Campaign, the most celebrated epic of Rus. Let us begin this narration, brethren, from the old times of Vladimir to this present time of Igor, who strengthened his mind with courage, who quickened his heart with valor, and thus imbued with martial spirit, led his valiant regiments against the Cuman land in defense of the Russian land. During his reign, Novgorod-Seversk enjoyed the status of the second most powerful town in the Chernigov land. Basing their observations on archaeological evidence, a number of investigators proposed that Igor built the Cathedral of Saint Saviour in the Monastery of the Transfiguration outside of the town. It has also been suggested that he founded the stone church in Putivl. To judge from circumstantial evidence, Igor's reign in Chernigov was uneventful. He continued the family chronicle that his father and brother had commissioned. His early life. He was the elder son of Svyatoslav Olegovich, by his second wife, the Novgorodian Catherine. By giving the child the baptismal name of Yury, Svyatoslav Olegovich acknowledged his friendship with Prince Yury Vladimirovich of Suzdal. In choosing Igor for the boy's princely name, he testified to the close bond that had existed between him and his deceased brother. His father died on February 15, 1164. Igor's half-brother, Oleg Svyatoslavich, took over the control of Novgorod-Seversk and probably gave Putivl to Igor. Before 1170, Igor married a daughter of Prince Yaroslav Volodymyrovich Osmomysl of Halych. Around June 1171, the Cumans renewed the raids along the Ros River and they attacked towns belonging to the Ulgavichi. Igor led a campaign against the invaders on June 29. After crossing the river Vorskla, he learned that Khan's Kobiak and Konchik were devastating districts around Pereyaslav. He crossed back over the river and rode to confront the raiders. On July 20, his družina killed many of the nomads and took others captive. While returning from his victory, Igor visited the shrine of SS Boris and Gleb in Vyshgorod to celebrate the feast. There he met with Roman I Rostislavich of Kiev and his brothers on July 25. The meeting was political in nature in that Igor would have pledged allegiance to the new ruler of Kiev, Prince of Novgorod-Seversk. His half-brother, Oleg Svyatoslavich, died on January 16, 1180. Thus Igor left Putivl to succeed him in Novgorod-Seversk. Soon after Oleg Svyatoslavich's death, Grand Prince Svyatoslav III Vsevolodovich of Kiev summoned Igor and Igor's brother Vsevolod Svyatoslavich to Lyubek and concluded an agreement. Svyatoslav Vsevolodovich's main objective in assembling the senior generation of Olgavichi was to secure Igor's allegiance. On September 8, Svyatoslav Vsevolodovich ordered Igor and Prince Vsevolod III Yuryovich of Vladimir to lead the junior Olgavichi and Monomashichi against Vyshgorod, that he was besieging. The 9-week siege of the town became a failure. At the beginning of 1181, Svyatoslav Vsevolodovich launched an expedition against Vsevolod Yuryovich in order to free from captivity his son Gleb Svyatoslavich. Before setting out, the Grand Prince commanded his son Yaroslav Svyatoslavich and Igor to remain behind and defend Chernigov against the Rostislavichi. Later, Yaroslav Svyatoslavich and Igor waged war on the Principality of Drusk, whose Prince Gleb Rogvoldovich formed a pact with Prince David Rostislavich of Smolensk. Although David Rostislavich came to assist the the Prince of Drusk, but Svyatoslav Vsevolodovich, who had expanded his authority over Novgorod, made David Rostislavich flee from the field of battle and forced Gleb Rogvoldovich to capitulate. From Drusk, Svyatoslav Vsevolodovich traveled south to evict Grand Prince Rurik Rostislavich from the Kievan land. Meanwhile, Igor, accompanied by Khans Konchik and Kobiak, was waiting for him near Vyshgorod. After Svyatoslav Vsevolodovich occupied the capital, the Cumans asked him to let Igor accompany them to the Lake Dolosk. When Yurik Rostislavich learned that Igor and the nomads were encamped on the other side of the Dnieper River, he sent troops to attack them. His troops defeated the Cumans. Igor and Khan Konchik, however, escaped by boat to Chernigov. It is likely that Igor and Khan Konchik formed a marriage alliance and arranged the children's engagement. When Khan Konchik with his Donetsk Cumans pillaged the Pereyaslavl lands in February 1184, Svyatoslav Vsevolodovich sent his sons and his troops to Igor, ordering him to pursue the tribesmen. Svyatoslav Vsevolodovich co-ruler, Rurik Rostislavich, for his part, sent his troops under the command of Prince Vladimir Glebovich of Pereyaslavl. Igor was appointed to command all the troops of the Olgovichi, and he refused Vladimir Glebovich permission to spearhead the attack, because the vanguard contingent would get the first chance to grab the booty. Shortly afterwards, Vladimir Glebovich pillaged the Seversk towns of the Olgovichi and rode off in a huff. Igor also sent the Kievan troops home. Consequently, Igor went in pursuit of the Cumans with a greatly diminished force, including some black hats. Igor pursued the raiders, found them at the river Kiria, and took many captive. On his way home, he probably attacked Vladimir Glebovich's town of Glebov. In the summer, Grand Prince Svyatoslav Vsevolodovich launched a major campaign against the Cumans. Igor proposed that Svyatoslav Vsevolodovich take the route across the Pereyaslavl lands and he would meet him at the river Sula. But Svyatoslav Vsevolodovich rejected his proposal, and therefore Igor boycotted the expedition. However, on learning that Svyatoslav Vsevolodovich troops had departed, he also summoned his relatives. His aim was to plunder Cuman camps while the nomads were preoccupied fighting Svyatoslav Vsevolodovich forces. Anticipating no opposition, Igor was surprised to chance upon a Cuman raiding party of 400 strong around the river Merla, which gave his men an opportunity to win glory in the battle. In 1184, Igor harbored Vladimir Yaroslavich, who had been driven out of Halych by his own father. When Khan Konchik attacked again with a large force in 1185, Svyatoslav Vsevolodovich and Yurik Rostislavich quickly assembled a force. The chronicler claims that Igor was also eager to attack him, even against the advice of his drozheniki and adverse weather conditions prevented his departure. His campaign and its aftermath. Later, on April 13, 1185, Igor, with some other junior princes, undertook a daring raid against the nomads with the object of reaching the Lower Don area. After the princes joined forces at the Oskol River, a band of Cumans spotted them and sent horsemen to warn the neighboring camps. When Igor arrived at the river Salnitsa, his scouts informed him that they had spotted the enemy in battle array. They advised him either to attack quickly before the Cuman band received reinforcements or to withdraw. Igor and his relatives refused to return home because, they argued, the peers would mock them for fearing to face death and heap shame upon them. As Igor's forces came to the river Sioli, the enemy archers shot a volley of arrows at them and withdrew. Igor and his brother Prince Vsevolod Svyatoslavich of Troubetsk advanced information at a steady pace, but his nephew Svyatoslav Olgovich of Ryls and his son Vladimir Igorovich set off in pursuit and defeated the nomads. After all the contingents had reassembled, Igor advised that they withdraw under the cover of darkness because they had seen how great a force the Cumans had already mustered. But Svyatoslav Olgovich pointed out that he had pursued the Cumans over a great distance and that his horses were too exhausted to set off immediately. Therefore Igor ordered his troops to rest for the night. Alarmed at the audacity of the princes to come to the very lairs, the Donetsk Cumans sounded a general alarm. For 3 days enemy archers shot arrows at them without engaging them in battle. The princes' only hope lay in reaching the river Donets. If they fled, however, it meant deserting the common soldiers, and therefore they rode against the enemy. The raid ended in catastrophe. The Cumans surrounded Igor's forces like an unyielding wall so that only 15 of the Rus men escaped. Igor was seized by a Cuman called Chulbuk, but later Khan Konchak assumed responsibility for his Svat Igor, who had been wounded. After learning of Igor's defeat, Svyatoslav Vsevolodovich sent his 2 sons Vladimir and Oleg Svyatoslavich to the Pozhmy region to serve as interim defenders of the Seversk towns. According to the chronicler, the Cumans assembled their entire nation to march against Rus. But the Khans argued. Koza suggested that they should raid the towns of the defeated princes along the river Seam. Konchak proposed attacking the princes on the Kievan side. Because the Khans obstinately stuck to the views, they split the horde into 2. Koza attacked Putivl but failed to take it. Nevertheless, he set fire to its outer town, pillaged the district, and razed surrounding villages. Meanwhile, Igor was spending his captivity in Konchak's camp. Although 20 Cumans were appointed to guard him, he was free to ride wherever he chose and to hunt with hawks. We are told that a Cuman offered to help him to escape. One day at dusk, he raised the tent flap and crawled out while the guards were entertaining themselves with games. The glow of the sunset had faded. Igor sleeps. Igor keeps his vigil. Igor's thoughts cross the prairie from the great river Don to the small river Donets. Beyond the river, Ovlur whistles. Having caught a horse, he warns the prince. Prince Igor will not remain a prisoner. The earth rumbled, the grass rustled, and the Cuman tents began to stir. After crossing over to the other side of the river Tor, Igor rode away. He traveled 11 days to the town Donets. From there he went to Novgorod-Seversk. We are not told when Igor escaped, but he could not have been in captivity for more than a few months. He probably fled in the late summer at the latest. After arriving in Novgorod-Seversk, Igor visited Yaroslav II Vsevolodovich in Chernigov and asked for military aid. Next, he went to Svyatoslav Vsevolodovich in Kiev, and he undoubtedly asked him to assist in collecting the ransoms for the 3 captive princes. After leaving Svyatoslav, he visited Yury.Igor. Archaeological evidence suggests that after returning to Novgorod-Seversk, Igor reinforced the fortifications and founded new ones in the vicinity of VIAF. Marriage alliances. In 1187, Igor reconciled his brother-in-law and father-in-law, and dispatched his son Svyatoslav Igorovich to escort Vladimir Yaroslavich home. In the autumn of 1188, his son Vladimir Igorovich returned home from captivity with Khan Konchak's daughter. On September 26, 1188, Igor and his family attended the festivities organized by Yury.Igor to celebrate his son's wedding. During the same week, Yury.Igor gave away his daughter to Igor's son Svyatoslav. In 1190, Grand Prince Svyatoslav Svyatoslavich Vsevolodovich married his grandson David Olgovich to Igor's daughter. Svyatoslavich Vsevolodovich died during the last week of July 1194, and his death changed the order of seniority among the Olgovichi. His only brother, Yaroslav Vsevolodovich, became the new senior prince of the dynasty, and Igor became the second in seniority in the family. Prince of Chernigov. On an unspecified date in 1198, Prince Yaroslav Vsevolodovich died, and Igor succeeded him on the throne of Chernigov. One of his first tasks was to renew the alliances that Yaroslav Vsevolodovich had concluded with Roman Mstislavich of Volodymyr Volynski. He also endorsed the alliances Yaroslav Vsevolodovich had made with Vsevolod III Yuryovich of Vladimir and the Rostislavichi. The same year, his brother-in-law, Prince Vladimir Yaroslavich of Halych, died, and his death created a political vacuum. Although the Olgovichi could argue that the marriage ties with his dynasty gave them the right to rule Halych, however, Roman Mstislavich was the quickest off the mark and he captured Halych. When he died, as the Prince of Chernigov, Igor merited burial in the Cathedral of Holy Saviour. In the arts, on his campaign against the Cumans, a heroic poem was written which is the peak of Old East Slavic poetry. As a matter of fact, scholars still argue as to whether the lay of Igor's campaign is written in verse or in rhythmic prose. In either case, it is poetry at its height and its language is racy and powerful. Besides rhythm, the poetic elements of the lay comprise an extremely rich imagery constructed primarily on parallels with nature, symbolism, poetic address, and lyric lamentation. In 1869, Vladimir Stasov, a major literary figure of 19th-century Russia, suggested to Alexander Borodin that an opera might be written on the subject of the lay of Igor's campaign. Borodin began to write his Prince Igor, but he left the opera unfinished at the time of his death nearly 20 years later. It fell to Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov and Alexander Glazunov to finish the orchestration and prepare Prince Igor for publication and performance in 1890. Marriage and children. Before 1170, unnamed Yaroslavna, the second daughter of Prince Yaroslav Volodymyrovich of Halych by his first wife Olga Yuryevna of Kiev, Prince Vladimir Igorovich of Halych, unnamed Igorovna, wife of David Olegovich. Oleg Igorovich died at an early age. Prince Svyatoslav III Igorovich of Volodymyr Volynski, Prince Roman II Igorovich of Halych. Ancestors.